those frankly that could have killed us at any moment, that could have bombed us, shelled us, shot a missile at us, dropped drones on us, whatever. Like we were a target. We wouldn't do services Badarak even on Sundays. We wouldn't go upstairs. It was a truncated service that we did downstairs because, of course, Sunday mornings are going to be more dangerous in a big visible church like this. And at this time, we're praying for the people that would do this to us. That, when I think of what it is that's been handed to us through the generations, this is it.
Well, welcome back to Fragments of Healing. You know, this is a series in which we look at the various aspects of humanity and we talk about how healing can help in those particular instances. Well, today we're going to be talking about the people of Armenia and the people of Artsakh. You may know it as Nagorno-Karabakh. There was a war there that was devastating, and a lot of healing is now necessary. So, but before we get going, we have speaking with us Ezras, who was there during the war. He is, by the way, a deacon of the Armenian Church, a graduate of St. Narcissus Seminary. He now is a professor at Laramie County Community College in Wyoming. So, Ezras, why don't you start us out by giving us a real quick tutorial on the war itself? When was it? What was it?
It's a very good question. And first, thank you for inviting me to do this with you, Dana. You've been with me throughout this journey and through the war, the journey through that as well. I've been grateful for your presence through this all. I think it depends on who one asks. For me, this war basically is a continuation of what was going on in the 90s, the all-out war that just sort of froze for a little while, but it was still active. There were still skirmishes on the border. So the collapse of the Soviet Union, you had this territory primarily occupied by Armenians, historically occupied by Armenians, and it was essentially given to the Azeris. And, you know, when the Soviet Union collapsed, without going into all of the geopolitics and Stalin and that history, what we were left with was basically an island of Armenians within a territory of people who would have preferred to see us all dead. And so this directly, in my mind and in many others, connects with the genocide as well. It's nothing short of a hatred toward a people. And we're the David in this Goliath story, essentially. We had no chance, but we fought for 44 days. There's still fighting going on. Even this past week, soldiers died in drone attacks, and a lot of people had to leave. Their lands were given over at the end of the war, if we can say that, or they had left during the active fighting just because they didn't have shelters or wasn't safe enough for their families. Many stayed. I will say a few stayed. Not many. A few stayed during the war. Many, though, did come back after. Those who could come back.
Those who could have had a place to come back to came back.
Right. If it wasn't shelled and if it weren't, handed over.
Yeah. Wow. And this, I was there, as you know, last month, and I'm an American Armenian, and I really didn't realize this has affected the whole country. Everybody, not even if they didn't lose anybody,
Hmm.
they all lost somebody. There was this great feeling of loss going on. So, when we discussed this last, Yesras, you talked about people of Armenia have maintained, in Artsakh, they have maintained their humanity. Could you say just a little bit about that to the people? Because what are you talking about? Could you say just a little bit about that?
I think when we think about war, we think of nothing but animosity and hate, violence. Of course, it's a war. These are natural um, concepts associated with war, but what I did not expect to find was uh, a sense of a sense of peace through the war. There were light moments, there were touching moments, there were where we were with each other and supporting one another. Uh, the people that had stayed, there was a sort of resolve that I did not expect. I should have, frankly, that's on me. I perhaps should have expected that from these people, but I did not find hate. I'm sure there were plenty of Armenians that hate Azeris and Turks and all of this stuff. Fine. I didn't hear that while I was there. I didn't hear that during the war. I didn't hear, let's kill them, let's displace them, anything like this. Um, if anything, it was about protecting our own homeland.
Yeah, more than hate. I like that. I hope everybody heard what you said. You felt a sense of peace in the people through the war, or in the war, throughout. They had resolve to protect the homeland, but you felt a sense of peace.
And that's not, I really, I want to be careful when I say that because that's not everybody's experience. And for a lot of people, it was devastating and heart-wrenching.
You told me about prayer that Bishop Barkev was leading in the basement of the Stepanakert Cathedral. Say a little bit about that because bombs were flying. It was in the middle of the strife. And they were praying. Tell me a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, and I want to own this because it is just my experience. You know, the closer I was, you taught us this in seminary. You know, the first person singular, the closer I was to the front, the more I felt that peace when we were under attack, and we can talk about that later. But at least when we were under the shelter, under the church, in the shelter of what was the hall of the cathedral. Barkev Sirpazan basically set up a little monastery. They were doing the 9 hours of the church, and I was going in. I had this sense when I was going in as a person. I was going in as a photojournalist, as someone who likes to take pictures and felt a calling to this kind of work. I was going also as a psychologist, thinking this is going to inform my practice, my teaching, my interactions, whatever I do after this, it's going to be changed by this experience. I already had the sense. And then the third was as a deacon. So as I'm serving with Barkev Sirpazan, you know, the church in Shushi had been attacked twice. Ghazanchetsots was attacked twice in the same day. This double tap that injured journalists, civilians. So we knew no one under that church thought we were safe. We were safer, but we weren't safe ever. And we're constantly praying for we're constantly praying for peace, constantly praying for peace. I know it's usually translated again in peace, but I'm more convinced now it's again for peace. That's our first request. That's our first desire of our hearts. So we're under there, and there's a part in the evening service, and I know this from seminary days. We did it every night of the week, where the deacon goes through this litany of people for whom we're praying. Hishaderes, Pastroniaiskos, Zenochsenmen, all of that, right? As Neriales, Sishchanes, as Charcharanes, as Paradares, as Dishnamis Adelis. In this prayer, at the end of the service, we're praying specifically for those who hate us, for those who persecute us, those who wish us ill. We prayed for the captives, which growing up in America, like we get to Kohutiun and Azadutiun, that part in the Baradak, we're praying for the release of the captives.
This was all real. The litanies were real, not hypothetical.
These were real.
Yeah. We're not in a basement in America, a church hall in America. And so they were praying for our prisoners, but they were also praying, and they understood the words. They're praying for the persecutors, those that hated them. They're praying for them.
Those, frankly, that could have killed us at any moment, that could have bombed us, shelled us, shot a missile at us, dropped drones on us, whatever. Like we were a target. We wouldn't do services Baradak even on Sundays. We wouldn't go upstairs. It was a truncated service that we did downstairs because, of course, Sunday mornings are going to be more dangerous in a big visible church like this. And at this time, we're praying for the people that would do this to us. That, when I think of what it is that's been handed to us through the generations, this is it.
What is?
This is our cons. This is our treasury. This is. Who does this?
Yeah. For Armenians in America, Americans of Armenian descent, they should know this is our heritage. This is our treasure. To pray for the enemy, to pray for the persecutors, to not hate. What a... above my pay grade, but it shouldn't be. This is our heritage, this is who we are. And you felt a lot of that when you were there. Yes, there would be people who had abject hate, etc., but what you felt, by and large, was the people were defending their homeland without hate. And in that moment of prayer, you're actually praying for the enemy. Maybe we can talk a little later about how we can translate that identity to Americans of Armenian descent in America. And what should be our stance? Our identity. What should our identity be here? But I want to ask you, though, you're driving to Marduni with killer drones all around. And you had another term that just caught me. Radical acceptance. Say a word. Say a word on radical acceptance. Well, they're killer drones.
I have to credit my friend Matt with that, who is a Marine. he was one of my supports during the time, especially because military things are by and large beyond me. But I understood enough. And he was telling me, well, I'll tell the story. We were out on our way to Martuni, and the journalist that was on our team, Mike Krikorian, he really wanted to get to Martuni. He wanted to get to the front lines. And we had gone to another village, to a hospital that we couldn't disclose the location because the doctor we were interviewing was sure it would be bombed. He was from Los Angeles. We went for a story. So we ended up in this other village first. It was a mistake. He gets upset. Finally, we're going to Martuni. And we stop by the sign of Monte Melkonian, who is, if you don't know, the war hero from the 90s. From my hometown, Visalia, California. Grew up in my parents' generation and went and unified the Armenian forces really to repel the Azeris and give us what we had for the past 30 years or so. So this guy's from California too. So he wants a picture in front of Monte's portrait. On our way into the village, it says, "Welcome to Monte Kert," which is the villager's name. They wanted to rename it, but it's got the Martuni in these big red letters. Maybe you've seen it. So we stopped for the photo op, and I'm thinking to myself, Mike, I know that this is a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. We're here, under shelling, in the middle of a war, on our way. Like, I understand it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it might be our last. So this is going through my head. Get out of the van, take a few shots. He starts walking back toward the van, 2 steps into it. Whiz, and shell land about 100 meters from us. Drop to the ground, check in with my team, make sure everybody's okay. It was one of those, had it been a cluster munition, where it not only does it strike the ground or whatever it's striking, it will release laterally a bunch of other smaller munitions. So if it were one of those, which were used very popularly during the war, I wouldn't be talking with you, frankly. So made sure no one was injured, that like shrapnel wasn't an issue. Those cluster munitions were not an issue. Everybody was fine. No one was bleeding. After the visual check, I got up, and it was weird because I realized I felt the shock on my feet. This is the first time I've been in such an attack. So this is all new to me. And I did not want to go near the front line, honestly. I was more interested in what was going on with the civilians, the explosions, this action. I was not interested in that. But it found us. One of my friends would say, actually, she said to Mike, who wanted to go to the front line, she said, "Don't worry about going to the front line. The front line will come to you." And that's exactly what happened. So you feel the shock wave under your feet. I felt the shock wave under my feet, drop to the ground. Everybody's fine. Get up to take some shots because they're attacking journalists at this point. There was another team of journalists leaving Martuni at the time, another buddy of mine. We didn't know that we were by each other at the same time, but we figured it out later. And I realized when I stood up and I started shooting, I mean, you need a steady hand. Your hand can't be all over. Like, this nervousness doesn't work as a photographer. And what I was surprised by was the steadiness. That I was just breathing and I was there. And I think if there are some moments in life where we feel fully alive. Some people chase this through adrenaline rushes and that kind of a thing. I'm sure there was plenty of adrenaline at that point too, pumping through my veins, but that was a point at which I was fully present fully alive and aware of that and grateful for that.
Grateful. Yeah. Fully alive and grateful. Wow. We've been talking about this whole situation about Armenia. And in the title, it occurs to me now is Fragments in Healing, which they still need. Armenia really, really still needs it. There's going to be ripple effects of this war for years to come. In so many, you're a psychologist, in so many different ways. But at the moment, what I'm gathering from what you're saying, our heritage is, let me use the word, is to love. Be grateful to God, the God who loves us. And to not hate an enemy. Protect ourselves, but not hate the enemy.
Yeah, look, if I just hated the Azeris, cursed the Azeris that were attacking us, what good would that have done? If I hated them, if I cursed them, swore at them, even if I ran, right? Because there was nothing that we could have done. And that's where I think that radical acceptance comes from. I called my Marine buddy and I'm like, Matt, this is what happened. And he said, we both went to the new school where there were a bunch of like people who should have been hippies, basically, right? And there's all this stuff about radical acceptance, mindfulness, meditation, this kind of thing. And he's like, people spend years, decades, thousands of dollars doing these retreats and trainings and programs to get to this point of radical acceptance. All you need to do is go to an effing war zone. Because it doesn't matter what you do next. And this is the reality too, I think, that is ingrained in us somehow. At least it should be ingrained in us. I don't know how aware we are of the existential moment we're in as Armenians. But on a personal level, this is also where we are on a daily basis from second to second. I don't know what's going to happen to me. We can schedule an interview to talk about healing, but I might not have gotten here, right? There's a sort of hazy sense as we're going through our daily lives that just that burns off in war. That dissipates, and there's this clarity of like, this could be it. And the life that we live during that time is a different life. Yeah. And if only we could take some of that, not the death and destruction, or I'm not wishing that on anybody. But if we could take that element of, I don't have control. And that's okay, because even if I'm not okay with not having the control, not being okay with not having the control is going to make me even worse. It's going to make me more anxious. And then I'm not going to be functional as much as I would be if I said, okay, doesn't matter. Here I am. Here I am. And here we are. And I think if we tapped into that, there needs to be some idea to unify us. I think we're sorely lacking that, whether it's in Armenia, whether it's in the US, many parts of the world. As humans, we're lacking this notion of what can unite us.
Give me an answer. Give me an answer. What can unite us?
Peace. Peace. If peace were everyone's number one goal, the things that, I don't want to get into politics at all, but imagine the systemic change that comes from prioritizing peace. And I understand this, the power struggle, because in order to prepare for peace, you have to prepare for war. You want peace, you need to prepare for war. This is necessary while we're fragmented. But if we were actually a healed humanity, it would be a completely different story.
A healed humanity.
We're not going to fight, no matter how much we may disagree with each other. We're not going to fight. We don't want to
We're not
fight.
gonna hate. Yeah, we're not going to hate. We're not going to hate. Yeah. I could apply that to when in America, a lot of times people rally together to hate Turks. I'm not going to go there. Rather, I think if we can just have that solid peace, like you're talking about, there is so much we can do in this world that is good for the world. You know, standing by those that are oppressed, being with them. I want to kind of end this with you mentioned Yevyevis, and again, for peace, let us beseech the Lord. And I want to end with that prayerfulness, but I want to use an example of a 92-year-old in the village of Tatul, which is a broken down village outside of the broken down city of Tallinn in Armenia. And I had the occasion to be there in this woman's home. And she was in bed. That was her permanent place in the living room, bed. She had lost her husband in the first war in 1990. She had lost a son in the war you're talking about now. So I said, Mike, what do you want me to pray for? Without hesitation, she said, pray for peace. Pray that there be no more fighting. She wasn't hating a Turk. She wasn't hating an Azeri. Just right off the top of her head, peace. And everybody around her said, Grandma, pray for health. And she kept staring me in the eye. Because over there, an Armenian priest doesn't ask a person what they want to pray for, but she kept staring me right in the eye. Peace. So there's no more conflict in life. And so, what do we need to? There's another litany, Sargsyan, deacon Ezras. There's another litany that comes a little later. Very seldom do we put two things in a litany. And the litany is Yeves Chauchan, Basen Chauchan Ashkari, Yev Hastaruchan Surba, and I'm not in liturgy, so I can't say it. But we pray peace for the whole world and stability for the Holy Church. We can't have peace unless the world cannot have peace. The world cannot have peace unless the church is stable. And that's us. That's us. Radical acceptance, gratitude. I love your terminology. And maintaining our humanity as people of peace. That's what will bring peace to the world, only if the church is solid. And that was my prayer. Hey. Thank you so much, Ezras. We're going to be in touch.
Of course.
Wyoming is just too far away. That ain't never happening.
I'll come to the Midwest at some point soon.
Try it. Come to the Heartland. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we'll meet in St. Narcisse.
Can do that too. God bless you, Ezras. Thank you. And I hope that people caught a lot of what you said.
Yeah.
From the heart.
I don't know how well I articulate it. And there's just so much, like, you know, the woman that, I don't know. I think I told you, I just saw her and she was sitting just like staring off into like nowhere. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I went up to her. She was one of the people who took care of us in the hotel, and fed us, cleaned up after us, all of that. And I was like, Mama John, inch for me bana. And she, without looking at me, she just stares and says in this voice, Yerek ne. And at that point, I knew.
I had 3 sons.
Then she says, Hima mihasinen.
Now they're together. I had 3 sons, and now they're together.
So what do I do but put my arm around her? Like, what do you say? Like, there's no amount of CPE that prepares you for that. There's But if there was one thing that I did gain from those experiences was just be there. That's the best thing I can do, is just be there. It seems like so little. It seems so insignificant. But that's the best I can do. That was the best I could do.
That's it. Be present and be the person other people need to see at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ezras.
Thank you, Dad John.
We'll see you. God bless you.
All right.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.